The audience had already decided what kind of performance this would be before she even touched the mic. Whispers moved like wind through the theater rows. A few people stifled quiet chuckles. One judge leaned toward another and said with a smirk, "This'll be over quick." Cameras panned in close, hoping to catch the awkwardness. Standing on stage was a woman who didn't fit the image of a star. No flashy gown, no sky-high heels, no hair extensions cascading in curls, just a soft gray cardigan, dark jeans, and worn-out sneakers. She looked more like someone browsing at a library than someone about to perform for a national audience. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the microphone. She wasn't supposed to be here, not really. Her name had been added to the list last minute. A tech assistant had noticed her singing to herself backstage, softly, almost shyly, and suggested she try out. The producers didn't expect much, they just needed to fill a slot. So they gave her a number, clipped it to her shirt, and told her to walk out when her turn came. She didn't ask for lights or a backtrack, she didn't ask for anything at all. Now, standing center stage, she cleared her throat gently. The audience barely looked up from their programs. A few people in the front row checked their phones. One of the judges didn't even lift his eyes. He was already writing a note. Too timid. No chance. And then, she sang. Just one note. That was all it took. The room didn't go quiet because they were being polite. It went quiet because no one had expected a voice like that to come from someone like her. Clear, powerful, haunting. And in that instant, everything changed. The first few lines of her song hung in the air like silk, gentle yet unshakable. The judges, once slouched and bored, slowly straightened in their seats. One of them stopped mid-scribble, the pen frozen above the paper. Another leaned forward, eyebrows rising in disbelief. The audience, which had been fidgeting and whispering seconds ago, now sat in perfect silence. Not even the sound of a cough or a shuffle. Just her voice, moving through the theater like a tide, drawing everyone in without force. She sang without theatrics. No unnecessary hand gestures, no overdone vibrato, just the raw, effortless purity of someone who wasn't performing to impress, but because the song lived inside her. And tonight, it had finally found a way out. A woman in the front row, glammed up and cynical, blinked, then touched her cheek, surprised to find it damp. Backstage, one of the sound crew turned to another and said under his breath, "She's not even trying. This is just real." And it was. Real in a way that nothing else that evening had been. The judges began glancing at each other, not with smugness now, but wonder. They were no longer thinking about ratings or witty critiques. They weren't thinking at all. They were listening. As the song built toward its chorus, her voice didn't just grow louder, it grew deeper. There was history in it, heartbreak, hope, the kind of emotion you can't fake, and no coach can teach. Every word carried weight, every pause a purpose, and when she hit that final high note, soft, soaring, and soul-stirring, something in the room broke open. The lights seemed softer, the stage somehow brighter, and in the shadows beyond the crowd, people began to rise from their seats, not in applause, not yet, but in awe. As the last note faded into silence, the room didn't erupt into applause, not immediately. It was too stunned. For a moment it felt like time had paused. Even the judges didn't quite know what to do. Their mouths were slightly open, eyes fixed on the woman who now stood motionless, her hands still gently wrapped around the mic, her expression calm, almost detached from what she'd just done. Then came the first clap, from somewhere in the back, followed by another, and then all at once, the theater exploded with applause so thunderous it shook the walls. People stood to their feet, some cheering, others wiping away tears as if they'd just experienced something they couldn't quite explain. The same guests who had looked down on her when she walked on stage were now the ones clapping the loudest. One of the judges, an industry legend known more for sarcasm than sincerity, actually pushed back from the table and stood, his hands moving slowly but deliberately as he clapped, eyes locked on the woman he had judged too quickly. The host of the show walked on stage clearly emotional. "I don't think any of us saw that coming," he said into the mic, his voice cracking slightly. That was something else. She didn't smile. She simply nodded, giving a small bow. Not out of performance, but respect. The kind of grace that says, "Thank you, but I didn't do this for you." Backstage, producers scrambled to find her application. Contestants who had spent thousands on stylists and vocal coaches now looked at each other with a different kind of panic. Not envy, but realization. This woman had just changed the temperature of the room, and all she had brought with her was a voice. No spotlight, no sob story, no gimmicks, just truth. And in an industry so used to glitter, gimmicks, and grand entrances, her quiet power felt like a revolution. The standing ovation finally faded, but the aftershock of her performance lingered like perfume in the air, sweet, unmistakable, and impossible to forget. She walked off the stage not like someone seeking praise, but like someone leaving behind something sacred. No victory dance, no wave to the camera, just a deep breath and a quiet step into the wings. Backstage was chaos. Crew members clapped her on the back. One stage manager wiped his eyes and said, "I've been here 10 years, never seen a crowd that still." The producers, once indifferent to her last-minute entry, now huddled over laptops and phones. "We need to find her story," one of them muttered. "Where did she come from? Does she have social media? A demo? Anything?" But there was nothing. No online portfolio, no team, no history of chasing the spotlight. Just a woman who had been humming to herself in a backstage corner an hour earlier. One of the younger contestants, still holding her number tag and looking down at her sequined dress, whispered, "She didn't even warm up." The camera crew reviewed the footage, hoping to reframe the performance, to plan an encore, to control the narrative. But they couldn't touch what had happened on that stage. It had been too pure, too real, too untouchable. Back in the dressing room, she sat on a folding chair and removed her sneakers slowly. She didn't ask for scores, didn't ask if she'd made it to the next round. She knew none of it mattered. A knock came at the door. It was the head judge. He didn't have a clipboard or a mic. He didn't come with a camera crew or a speech. He just stood there quietly, then said, "I've judged thousands of auditions in my life. I've seen talent. I've seen training. I've seen ambition. But I've never seen someone sing like they didn't need the room to exist." She nodded politely. "I don't even know your name," he added. She looked up, calm and unshaken, and said, "That's all right. I didn't come to be remembered. I came to remember who I was." And with that she stood, put on her coat, and walked out. Not as a contestant, not as a viral moment, but as a reminder that the rarest kind of brilliance needs no announcement. It just needs a moment of truth. Outside the venue, the night air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the electric storm she had left behind. Streetlights cast soft, golden halos on the sidewalk as she walked alone, unnoticed now by the passing crowd. No one chasing her for autographs, no swarm of cameras, just a quiet city night, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But inside that theater, everything had changed. The judges didn't move on with the next act right away. They sat in stunned silence, still processing. One of them muttered, "She rewrote the show's meaning in 5 minutes." The producers whispered about bringing her back, maybe with a special segment, maybe a mystery artist reveal in the finale. But the truth was, no amount of framing could recapture what had already passed. Her audition began spreading online. First through backstage leaks, then through a shaky fan-recorded video posted to social media. Within hours, views surged into the hundreds of thousands. Then millions. People didn't just share it, they replayed it. They dissected it. They used words like raw, healing, timeless. Celebrities commented, "This gave me chills. How did we miss her? I hope she sings again." But she wasn't reading the comments. She was making tea in her small apartment, humming quietly to herself, her cat curled up on the windowsill. Across town, the talent show's producers called her number, sent emails, even reached out to local news. They offered to fly her in again, promised better stage time, offered interviews, even sponsorships. They said the world was ready to know her name, but her phone stayed unanswered. Because she hadn't come to be discovered, she came to sing, to give something honest to a room that didn't expect honesty, to remind a culture obsessed with noise and image that sometimes the soul still speaks loudest when it's wrapped in quiet. And in a world that constantly demands more exposure, more drama, more explanation, she had offered less, and it had been enough. Weeks passed. The world continued to search for her. Music blogs called her the Phantom Voice. TV networks speculated about her background. Articles tried to stitch together pieces of a narrative that simply didn't exist. Some called her a vocal prodigy, others assumed she had turned down fame for privacy, and a few spun theories that she had once been a star who walked away from the spotlight. But the truth was simpler than any headline. She just loved to sing. She sang while washing dishes. She sang while walking home from the market. She sang to comfort herself during hard times and to celebrate when there was nothing else to celebrate but breath. Her voice wasn't shaped in studios. It was shaped in the silence of small rooms, empty train stations, and rainy windows. And slowly, something remarkable happened. People didn't just remember her performance. They remembered how it made them feel. Strangers said it reminded them of someone they'd lost. Couples said it made them hold hands again. Children mimicked her voice in the mirror, not to be famous, but to feel brave. The theater she had sung in eventually framed a photo from that night, her on stage. One foot slightly turned inward, eyes half closed, the mic still in her hands. The caption beneath it didn't list her name. It simply said, "The moment we remembered what music was for." She never returned to compete. She never sought a contract. She never stepped into a spotlight again. But her voice lingered, in quiet moments, in forgotten places, in the hearts of people who finally realized that greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it sings just once. And that's enough to change everything.